Have you ever wondered what truly makes a narcissist tremble? It's not the harsh words you might unleash in a moment of anger, nor the dramatic confrontations they so skillfully orchestrate to pull you into their web of manipulation. No, the thing that truly sends them into a panic is something far more quiet, far more powerful. The moment you turn your back and walk away from their life, they built an entire empire on the belief that you would always stay, always react to their lies, always fight to defend yourself, always pay attention, even if just to survive the psychological games they carefully crafted. But when you step off the chessboard they so meticulously set up, you're not just refusing to play, you're shattering the entire game, leaving them alone amidst the wreckage of their own making. This isn't a story about your weakness or their invincibility. This is a victory anthem about how, by choosing yourself, you can bring down an entire system designed to keep you small, and more importantly, how you can rise, stronger than ever, ready to claim a life no longer controlled by anyone else. Before we dive deeper, we need to look directly at the true nature of the narcissist, not through the lens of the false admiration they try to impose on you, but through the raw truth they never want you to see. They are not the strong, confident individuals they want you to believe they are. They are not born leaders or once-in-a-generation geniuses they so often crown themselves as, in their moments of inflated ego. In reality, they are dependent, not on money, not on material power, but on something far more critical, your attention. They need you to look at them, to react. Whether it's through the half-hearted compliments they manipulate you into giving, or the bitter accusations they skillfully plant in your mind to provoke a response. Why is attention so important to them? Because without it, they have no way to maintain the false self they've constructed, a facade that stands between them and the terrifying truth about who they really are. And what is that truth? A narcissist has no core. They lack the inner foundation that most people rely on, deep personal values, stable self-esteem, or pride in real accomplishments. While you and I can stand strong because of our inner strength, our ability to reflect, to draw meaning from what we believe in, they cannot. They are like machines that only function when fed with fuel, and that fuel is your emotion. Every word you say, every time you try to explain yourself so they'll understand, every moment you spend responding, whether in anger, pain, or even exhaustion, is the energy they need to keep going. Cut off that fuel and their system crashes. Not slowly, not with warning, but immediately, leaving them in a state of chaos, emptiness, and confusion. This isn't some vague theory or abstract idea I made up to impress you. This is something psychologists have proven over decades of research, through in-depth interviews, meticulous analysis, and countless real-life stories from people who've dealt with narcissists in their lives. They call it narcissistic supply, the constant stream of external validation that narcissists depend on to avoid facing the truth that without you, they are nothing. Think about that for a moment. While you can sit alone in peace, reflect on your life, and feel proud of what you've overcome, they cannot. They are incapable of self-reflection, incapable of finding value from within. They need you, or someone, to reflect back the false self they've built, because without that reflection, they don't know who they are. To make this clearer, let's look at a real-life example many of us have probably encountered. Imagine a coworker who constantly seeks your attention by bragging about their achievements in every meeting, exaggerating stories of success, or even by criticizing your work in front of others to drag you into unnecessary conflict. They don't care how you react. You could compliment them to keep the peace, or you could argue back to defend your integrity. As long as you react, they've won. Or think about an ex-partner who always knew how to push your buttons, forcing you into arguments, apologies, or efforts to prove you still cared, just so they could feel like they still had control in the relationship. That's how they survive, not through inner strength, not through real confidence, but by draining your strength to sustain their fragile ego. When you walk away, you're not just exiting their life. You're delivering a direct blow to the very core of their existence. A narcissist cannot bear your absence. not because they love you or cherish you in the way a healthy person might. No, they're incapable of genuine love. They can't bear it because your absence forces them to confront the one thing they fear most: themselves. Staying and engaging, whether it's through the arguments they spark, the desperate attempts to make them understand your side, or even your passive presence in their life, means you're still giving them what they crave: proof that they matter, that they have power over you, that they are still the center of your world. But the moment you close that door, you send an undeniable message: you no longer control me. And that doesn't just disorient them, it plunges them into a deep crisis, one they are not equipped to handle. Without you to mirror their inflated sense of superiority, they have no way to continue believing the lies they've told themselves every day just to survive. They are forced to ask, who am I without someone to manipulate? What am I without someone to blame? And this isn't a small question they can brush off with a shrug or a fake smile. This is a crack in the wall of their psyche, one that quickly spreads into a full collapse, leaving them with nothing but the emptiness they've spent a lifetime trying to hide. Let's look at this from a practical angle to better understand the power of this action. When you stay and argue with a narcissist, maybe over a blatant lie they told to make you question yourself, or a promise they never intended to keep, you may think you're defending yourself, fighting for the truth, but in reality, you're reinforcing their position. Every reaction you give is a small victory for them, a sign that they can still stir your emotions, that they still have control over you. But when you walk away, you pull the entire foundation out from under that game. There's no one left to argue with, no one left to manipulate, no one left to validate their sense of superiority. That's not just a blow to their ego. It dismantles the very reason they exist, leaving them face to face with a reality they can no longer avoid. Now, we need to talk about power, because this is where everything becomes crystal clear, where you begin to see the whole picture they never wanted you to see. The narcissist wants you to believe they hold all the power, that they're the one in control of the relationship, that you can do nothing but bow to their superiority. They want you to feel small, dependent, incapable of surviving without their presence in your life. But that's an illusion, a carefully crafted lie to hide a brutal truth. Their power isn't something they generate. It doesn't come from true strength or genuine superiority. It entirely depends on your participation. Every time you react, whether with anger at their unfair criticism, sadness from their cruel remarks, or a desperate attempt to prove your worth in response to their baseless accusations, you are handing them a piece of your power. When you argue back, you're silently confirming that their words have weight, that they're worth your time and energy. When you explain yourself, you're unknowingly validating their opinion as something that matters, as if you need their approval to feel okay. Even if you remain silent but continue to stay, continue to exist in their orbit, you're still signaling that their presence has influence, that they can still affect you just by existing. All of these are bricks in the wall of their power, a wall that cannot stand if you stop supplying the materials. Let's consider a real-life example to see this more clearly. Imagine you have a narcissistic boss who constantly tries to make you feel inadequate at your job. They criticize your reports, demand explanations for every little detail, and when you try to defend yourself, they smile, because they know you're still playing by their rules. Every time you respond, whether to protect your reputation or to prove your competence, you're reinforcing their power. You're showing them they can still make you dance to their tune, that you still care about what they think. But what happens if you withdraw, if you refuse to play that game? Perhaps by staying focused on your work and disregarding their unwarranted criticism. What then? They lose their grip on you. There's no one left to criticize, no one left to use as a platform for their ego. Their wall of power crumbles, not because you attacked it, not because you yelled at them, but because you refuse to keep building it. When you walk away, you're not just stopping the supply of those bricks, you're pulling them out one by one, causing the entire structure to collapse before their eyes. They're left with nothing to cling to, no way to maintain the illusion that they're in control. This is the truth they desperately don't want you to realize. They're not powerful because they're master manipulators. They're powerful because you allowed them to be. Stop allowing it, and their power vanishes like smoke in the wind. This isn't just a small victory you gain in a fleeting moment. This is a revolution in your mindset where you finally recognize that you are the one who holds the real power, that you've always had the ability to change the entire game with one simple action: walking away. So what happens when you truly leave? The door closes, not with a dramatic slam or a shouting match they could use to pull you back in, but with the steady, unwavering resolve of someone who has decided to reclaim their life. Suddenly, the narcissist has no one to engage with, no one to blame, no one to draw the validation they need to survive. They are left alone, and that is a state they are completely unequipped to handle. While a healthy person can find peace in solitude, can use alone time to reflect and grow from life's experiences, the narcissist is incapable of that. They don't know how to exist without someone to mirror the false self they've built, without someone to validate their very existence. Psychologists call this a narcissistic injury, a profound psychological wound that occurs when their supply is suddenly cut off. Without you, they don't just lose attention, they lose the very reason they believed they were special, superior, or invincible. They're forced to confront the feelings they've spent a lifetime running from, the insecurity that eats away at them piece by piece, the persistent sense of worthlessness that clings like a shadow they can't escape, the fear of being forgotten that they've tried to bury beneath layers of arrogance. This isn't a mild discomfort they can easily move past. It's a full-blown crisis, a psychological earthquake that shakes the very foundation of everything they've built to avoid looking in the mirror. You'll see them react, and their reactions are often predictable but deeply revealing if you look closely. Sometimes they'll lash out, hurling accusations at you as if you've betrayed them, as if choosing yourself is some kind of unforgivable crime. Sometimes they'll beg, making hollow promises of change they never truly intend to keep, promises they've used before to keep you hooked. Sometimes they'll act kind, sweet, even caring, a tactic they've used in the past to reel you back in when you began to pull away. But don't be fooled. This isn't love, and it's not genuine remorse. It's desperation. The desperation of someone losing everything they depend on to feel alive. They don't want you back because they cherish you. They want you back because they need you to keep living in the illusion that they are the center of everything, that they can control you, and through you control their world. In truth, this desperation isn't a sign of strength, it's the clearest proof of their weakness. When they scream, when they beg, when they pretend to change, they're not doing it from a place of power or confidence, they're doing it from a place of emptiness, from a deep fear that without someone to reflect their false self back to them, they will cease to exist. Think about it. A truly strong person doesn't need others to feel significant. A genuinely confident person doesn't have to manipulate or plead to make someone stay. But narcissists don't possess that strength or confidence. They only have a fragile mask, and when you leave, that mask shatters, revealing a truth they cannot bear. They are nothing without someone to define them. This leads us to a critical truth you must understand. Their reaction is not about you, it's about them. When they rage, it's not because you did something wrong, it's because they're terrified of losing the supply they need to survive. When they beg, it's not because they truly want to repair the relationship, it's because they're scrambling to hold on to the control they once had over you. When they act sweet, it's not real change, it's just another tactic to pull you back into their grip. Understanding this is the first step to freeing yourself from the guilt or sense of responsibility they try to plant in you, because you are not responsible for their survival, and you should never feel obligated to stay in order to save them from themselves. Think of a situation you may have experienced or witnessed. Someone you know tried to walk away from a narcissist in their life. Maybe a friend who always created drama to stay in the spotlight. When that friend began to pull back, the narcissist didn't let go easily. They sent long emotional messages, called in the middle of the night to pour out their pain, even showed up unexpectedly with tearful apologies. But what happened when your friend gave in and went back? Everything returned to how it was? the manipulation, the demands, the control. Because the narcissist never truly wanted a real relationship. They only wanted to maintain their emotional supply, to avoid confronting the emptiness within. Once you see this clearly, you realize that their efforts to pull you back aren't about real love. They're about their survival, not yours. And this is where the story begins to shift, where you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Because once you understand that their desperation is a sign of weakness, not strength, you also realize that you don't have to be afraid of them. You don't have to fear their accusations, their begging, or the dramatic performances they stage to keep you from leaving. All of it is just the final grasp of someone who is losing control, and that control only exists if you allow it. The moment you walk away and stand firm in your decision, you don't just cut off their supply, you take back the power they tried to steal from you, and that is the kind of strength they can't touch. This truth opens a new door, a door that leads you to real freedom. When you walk away, you're not just escaping them, you're dismantling the entire system they built to keep you under control. They wanted you to believe that you needed them, that you couldn't survive without their presence, that you would fall apart without them to guide you. But that was a lie, a carefully crafted lie designed to keep you bound, to make you question your own worth. When you walk away, you prove them wrong. You prove that not only can you survive, but you can thrive, that you are far stronger than they ever imagined, and that, more than anything, is what terrifies them, because it exposes the truth. They are not the center of your world, and they are not as irreplaceable as they told themselves. Let's look at this from a practical perspective to truly understand the power of that choice. Imagine you were once in a relationship with someone who constantly made you feel like you weren't enough. Maybe an ex-partner who criticized the way you lived, the way you worked, even the way you loved. They made you feel like if you left, you would lose everything, that happiness and success would be out of reach without them. But when you finally decided to leave, what happened? At first, they tried to pull you back, maybe with accusations that you were selfish, or with promises that they would change. But when you stood your ground, when you refused to return, you began to realize something. Your life didn't fall apart. In fact, it opened up. You found peace, rediscovered your passions, and rebuilt the confidence they had tried to destroy. That is living proof that they were never the key to your happiness. You were always the one holding that key. And when you stand firm in your decision to leave, you don't just reclaim your power, you send a powerful message to yourself. You tell your heart and mind that you deserve a life not ruled by someone else's insecurities, that you don't have to live in the shadow of anyone's false self. A narcissist may try to convince you that you're weak, that you need them to feel whole, but every step you take away from them is proof that's not true. You are not weak. You are an unstoppable force, a person capable of defining your own worth without needing anyone else's approval. That is the truth they can't bear, and that is the truth that will carry you into a new life, one where you are the one in control. But the story doesn't end when you walk away. In fact, that's where it truly begins. When you step out of their control, you don't just escape their grip, you open up an entirely new space for yourself. They tried to keep you trapped in a tiny box, a place where you had to live by their rules, constantly meeting their needs just to keep their fragile ego intact. But when you break out of that box, you don't just reclaim your freedom, you rediscover who you truly are, the person they tried to bury beneath the layers of doubt and fear they planted in your mind. You're no longer someone who has to apologize for existing, no longer someone who needs to prove your worth to them. You become a free individual with the right to live on your own terms, guided by your own values. And finally, pursue the dreams you once set aside because of them. Let's look at this through a more relatable example. Someone who was trapped in a relationship with a narcissistic family member, perhaps a sibling who constantly made them feel like they were never good enough. Every conversation was a battle. Every success was diminished. Every failure was exaggerated to keep them stuck in self-doubt. But when they decided to step away, not necessarily by cutting ties completely, but by setting firm boundaries, by refusing to engage in pointless arguments. What happened? They didn't just find peace, they rediscovered their passion. Maybe they started writing music, learning a new skill, or simply enjoying the quiet moments they never had before. They didn't just survive the departure, they flourished, proving that their life didn't hinge on anyone's approval, not even from someone as close as family. Walking away is not just a physical act, it's a profound transformation of your mind and soul. When you step out of their influence, you begin to realize that their criticisms were never the truth about you, they were reflections of their insecurity. The demeaning words they once used to make you question yourself weren't a judgment of your worth, they were their last-ditch efforts to keep you small, to stop you from realizing how powerful you truly are. Every step you take away from them brings you closer to your most authentic self, the version of you that doesn't need outside validation to feel whole, the version that can stand tall on its own 2 feet. And the most beautiful part? When you start living this way, you don't just transform your life, you change the way you see the world. You no longer view yourself through the distorted lens they forced on you. You begin to see yourself as someone with inherent worth, someone who deserves respect, love, and happiness. The narcissist may have tried to make you believe that you couldn't live without them, but by walking away, you prove the opposite is true. They are the ones who can't survive without you, while you are capable of thriving without them. This is the ultimate reversal of power, and it's entirely in your hands. This reversal isn't just a personal victory, it's a revolution in how you define yourself and your relationship with the world around you. When you lived under a narcissist control, they tried to write your story for you, casting you as a supporting character in their drama, where everything revolved around their needs, their insecurities, and their false self. But when you walk away, you take the pen back, you become the author of your own life. You're no longer someone who needs permission to feel worthy, no longer someone living by someone else's script. Instead, you begin writing new chapters, chapters grounded in the truth of who you are, in the strength you've always had, but maybe never fully recognized. Think about it. When you stayed with a narcissist, you were caught in an endless loop of self-doubt. They made you feel that every failure was your fault, that every success wasn't enough to meet their ever-changing standards. They convinced you that your worth was tied to whether or not you could please them, and because their standards always shifted, you never felt like you measured up. But when you walk away, that cycle breaks. You no longer chase their approval, no longer feel the need to prove anything to them. You begin to realize that your value doesn't lie in what they think about you, it lies in who you are, in what you believe in what you do for yourself and the people who genuinely deserve your presence. To see this more clearly, imagine someone who was stuck in a relationship with a narcissistic partner, someone who constantly made them feel they were never good enough. That person may have spent years trying to please the narcissist, working overtime to prove their worth, changing how they dressed to suit their partner's tastes, even giving up personal hobbies to avoid criticism. But when they finally left, what happened? They didn't just escape control, they rediscovered themselves. They began painting again, something they once loved but had set aside because the narcissist called it a waste of time. They found joy in the small things, a quiet morning with coffee, a conversation with friends uninterrupted by complaints. They didn't just survive, they began living a richer, more authentic life, and that proved something powerful. They never needed the narcissist to feel whole. Living this way changes more than how you see yourself. It transforms how you interact with the world. You start setting boundaries you never thought you could, because you now know that your time and energy are precious and should never be wasted on people who only seek to drain you. You no longer accept relationships that deplete you. You seek out those who uplift you, who respect you for who you are, not just for what you can do for them. The narcissist may have tried to convince you that you weren't worthy of that their control was just something you had to accept. But by leaving, you prove them wrong. You show that you do deserve a life where you're free to be yourself, where you're not limited by someone else's unrealistic expectations. And this brings us to a deeper truth. Walking away isn't just an act of self-preservation, It's a declaration of your worth. When you step out of their influence, you're not just rejecting the role they assigned you. You're claiming your right to live on your own terms. They may have tried to make you believe that you couldn't stand on your own, that you needed them for direction, for validation, for survival. But every day you live without them is proof that's not true. That not only can you stand, but you can soar. That you're stronger than any of the lies they ever planted in your mind. Let's consider another example to truly see the power of this transformation. Imagine working under a narcissistic boss, someone who constantly belittled you to feel superior. They may have endlessly criticized your work, stolen credit for your success, and made you feel like leaving would ruin your career. But when you finally walked away, whether to start a new path or simply to find a healthier work environment, what happened? You didn't just survive that transition, you thrived. You found a job where your talent was recognized, where you didn't have to live in fear of constant criticism. You realized that your career didn't depend on their approval, it depended on you, on your effort, your belief in your abilities. When you live without them, you don't just break their illusion, you build a new reality for yourself. The narcissist may have tried to trap you in a world where you had to constantly prove your worth, but by walking away, you create a world where your worth is self-evident, where you no longer have to fight to be seen. You stop living by their rules, stop playing their game. You set your own rules, and that changes everything. You start to realize that life isn't about pleasing people who can never be pleased. It's about living in alignment with who you are, about building a life that reflects your strength, your passion, and your purpose. And when you begin building that life, you don't just transform yourself, you inspire those around you. Others, people who may still be trapped under a narcissist's control, will look at you and see that there is a way out. They'll see that walking away isn't the end, it's the beginning of something greater, something more powerful. You become living proof that no one has the right to define your worth but you, that freedom isn't just a dream, it's a choice that's in your hands right now. But this transformation doesn't stop at simply inspiring others, it goes deeper, reaching into the very core of who you are. When you live without the narcissist, you're not just free from their control, you begin to heal the wounds they left behind. They may have made you doubt yourself for a long time, made you feel like you weren't good enough, not strong enough, not smart enough to make it on your own, but every day you live without them is a step toward unraveling those doubts. You no longer hear their voice echoing in your mind, judging every decision you make. You begin to hear your own voice, the one that says you are enough, that you've always been enough, and that you don't need anyone else to validate that truth. Think of someone who walked away from a narcissistic friend, maybe an old classmate who always made them feel inferior. For years, that person may have lived under the shadow of never measuring up, never being funny enough, successful enough, interesting enough. But when they finally cut ties, what happened? They didn't just escape the constant comparisons, they began to rebuild their confidence. They enrolled in a class they'd always wanted to try, met new friends who didn't judge them, and slowly realized that those criticisms were never the truth. They were just arrows fired from the other person's own insecurity. That old friend may have tried to pull them back with messages like, "I miss you," or "No one understands me like you do." But by refusing to return, they didn't just protect themselves, they healed themselves, one step at a time. As you heal, you don't just reclaim what they tried to take, you discover parts of yourself you may have never known existed. The narcissist may have tried to keep you small, locked in a role where you were never allowed to outshine them. But when you leave, you shatter that ceiling. You start to realize you have the power to dream bigger, to achieve more, to live a life unbound by the fear of judgment. They may have tried to convince you that you couldn't do it, that you needed them to stay grounded to avoid failure. But by walking away, you prove that true stability comes from within, and that failure is not something to fear when you know how to stand back up and keep going. And when you do rise, you don't just change your life, you transform your entire relationship with failure and success. The narcissist may have made you afraid of failure, convincing you that every mistake was proof you weren't good enough. But life without them reveals the truth. Failure isn't the end, it's part of the journey, a lesson that helps you grow. You stop fearing your mistakes because you now know they don't define you. They're simply stepping stones leading you to real success. A success you build for yourself, not one you have to seek permission from anyone else to achieve. When you walk this journey, you don't just find success, you find meaning. The narcissist may have tried to keep you in a small world where everything revolved around their insecurity, where you had to live to serve their ego. But when you leave, you open up a much bigger world, a world where you don't just live to survive, but live to shine. You begin to understand that life isn't about avoiding failure or pleasing people who can never be pleased. It's about seizing every moment, every opportunity to become the best version of yourself. They may have tried to make you believe that you weren't strong enough to do it, that you needed them to keep you steady. But every day you live without them is proof that not only are you strong enough, you're stronger than they could imagine. Stronger than you ever thought you were. Think of someone who once stepped out of the shadow of a narcissist. Maybe someone who had been stuck in a relationship with a friend who always made them feel unworthy. When they walked away, they didn't just escape constant judgment. They began building a meaningful life. They may have started a charity project, helped others find the light they once lost, or simply spent time enjoying what they loved, reading, jogging, or sitting under the sun without being disturbed. They didn't just survive, they lived with purpose, with joy, and with a sense of freedom the narcissist could never understand. That is what's waiting for you, a life not just worth living, but worth cherishing every single moment. And this is what I want you to carry with you when this video ends. You are not here to be a backdrop for anyone's ego. You are not here to be imprisoned by someone else's insecurity, to live a life suffocated by the lies they planted in your mind. You are here to rise up, to declare your worth, to live a life that reflects the strength, the courage, and the light within you. The narcissist may have tried to dim that light, to make you believe you couldn't shine without them. But when you leave, you prove that light never depended on them. It has always been yours, and it will burn brighter than ever when you are free to be yourself. When you look back on this journey, you'll see that leaving wasn't just a decision. It was a gift you gave to yourself, the gift of freedom, of healing, of the opportunity to live a life not limited by fear or control. They may have tried to make you believe that you couldn't do it, that you would fail, that you would lose your way. But you're not lost. You've found your path, the path that leads you to a stronger, more authentic version of yourself. Every step you take away from them is a step closer to the life you deserve, a life where you don't just exist, but truly live with all the passion, purpose, and joy you can imagine. So when you turn off this video, I want you to stand in front of the mirror and look at yourself, not through the narcissist's lens, not through the criticisms or doubts they once planted in your heart, but through the eyes of someone who chose freedom. Look at the one who had the courage to walk away, the strength to rise, and the love to build a new life. You are not just a survivor, you are a warrior, a pioneer, a soul that cannot be chained. The world is waiting to witness what you will do with this freedom, this strength, this light, and I know you will not let it down. So step out there, not with fear or regret, but with the pride of someone who knows they deserve better. You've broken their chains, taken back your life, and now it's time to live it, not for them, not for anyone else, but for yourself. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a great journey, a journey where you are at the wheel, where every day is an opportunity to shine, to love, to become everything you were born to be. You are ready, and so is the world. Live brightly, don't look back, because you deserve it, and no one can ever take your light away again.